So that was an issue.
So that was a huge issue for us.
And it's like they're putting so much emphasis on Spock and Kirk. One of the great things about Star Trek is the fact that you have a number of really interesting, vibrant characters with personalities and story arcs that are adhered to and that you can follow, but so much of these films is just Spock and Kirk. And
yes, we get the witty banter going back and forth, but how about Spock and McCoy, or Kirk and McCoy? We have Carl Urban, who has done a bang-up job of reinventing the character of McCoy and bringing in all of the beautiful, beautiful things that DeForest Kelley did in the original series. And yet he's barely on screen. And every time he leaves, I just want him to come back and save the movie a little more.
Yeah. This movie, though, this time around, Zachary Quinto did a lot better job as Spock. And Simon Pegg did a great job as Scotty, because Scotty's a big part, and Scotty's one of my favorite characters from the original series, and so I was really hoping that would happen. And Simon Pegg, maybe it was the comb over, I don't know, but it seemed to put him into the character a lot more.
Significantly better writing, more centered writing for both of those characters this time.
Yeah.
But the storyline, can we just talk about how the first 2/3 of the movie literally did not establish really any sort of storyline until we were all leading up until the last third, where we could revisit the story of Khan and the Wrath of Khan. Yeah. And really, the movie could have been half as long, especially if we had cut out all of the extraneous explosions that we sat through, wishing that they would turn the sound down a little bit in the theater.
Yeah. Well, there's just, like, we had to revisit Kirk's relationship with Pike to the point of almost completely recreating the bar scene where Pike sits down with Kirk at the beginning of the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
And then to make it even worse, really, they had to sit there and reminisce about that first bar scene, reminding us as the audience that we had already watched this in the last movie.
Yeah. It's like the Hercules, the Hercules TV series that aired a number of years ago. Before they had the TV series, they did a series of movies. And they did like 4 films, and then in the final film was nothing but flashbacks to the other 4 films. And so it was like this cheap cop-out, like they had to fulfill a contract and have this extra film made.
Kevin Sorbo would say, do you remember the time?
I remember the time.
And then it would flash back into something from the episode.
And they'd show like half an hour of that film and then cut back, and that's kind of what it felt like, and a couple times. And it's like, we don't have to revisit the relationship with Pike because it's already established.
Or the relationship between Kirk and Spock, and the fact that they have a rocky relationship in the alternate universe. And yes, we got that fine. And also, I felt that the whole, I saved you from a volcano. I mean, broken record, Kirk. Thank you. Spock has got it.
And can they fix the transporter on the freaking Enterprise?
Okay, here's the thing.
It's a convenient plot point in all of this, in all of Star Trek. The transporter never works when you need it to work. And I get that, but this time in this film, 4 or 5 different times that the transporter doesn't work. It's like, why even have the transporter as a thing? It never works. They never have enough power to use it.
In several situations in this where people are falling to their deaths, we have Chekhov, who easily in the first movie managed to beam people out of midair as they were falling, now is suddenly unable to do this. The other thing is, then the transporter equipment is apparently, for some reason, somehow unable now to tell apart machinery and human flesh.
Oh my gosh, that was so
we have McCoy down on the planet as this warhead is about to go off with his arm stuck in it, and Chekhov says, I'm sorry, Captain, but the transporter can't tell the difference between McCoy and the warhead. Really?
Because that's pretty obvious.
Because, like, flesh and machinery are the same in an alternate universe?
Yeah. Well, don't they lock onto the badge? At least they lock onto the badges in Next Generation.
And these, remember, their badges are just
they're just
stitched
a
on
cloth.
insignia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... That was a completely pointless scene. Because it's just like, okay, we have another half an hour to fill, so we're going to have him dismantle one of the warheads, but the warhead will go off if you tamper with it in any way.
Will it? Because it's actually secretly filled with a genetically altered cryo-frozen person.
Yeah.
So they were probably just fine anyway, because I don't think anything would have happened with the entire guts pulled out of the warhead.
Yeah.
I'm also a little confused as to why nobody could tell that there was any sort of explosive material in it. I get it. Scotty gets kicked off the Enterprise because he goes, "Oh, Captain, I can't tell what's inside. It's shielded." But he should have at least been able to tell that there was nothing about that thing that was going to explode.
Yeah. Well, they explode. They explode, but they have...
No. They had to pull the guts out and reload them with explosives. That was one of those very quick plot points that we passed over.
Because there's no possible way they'd have enough time to do that.
Also, yes, because within 12 minutes, Dr. McCoy, nonetheless,
dismantles all the warheads.
and puts new warhead material inside them. Because they've got this line around the Enterprise, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then this super intelligent super being, Khan, doesn't think to check that he's got the right warheads before he decides to blow up the Enterprise. Because that was a plot hole as well.
Granted, would you assume that the crew would be able to do that in the 30 seconds they were given? 72 warheads they were able to take full-size human being popsicles out and put in explosives? I mean, would you assume that they could do that?
And neatly stack them all in sickbay.
Yeah, and neatly stack them all. That was another thing.
Which I felt like at least they're being respectful. So, not just letting them roll around the floor of one of the cargo bays.
Yeah.
Speaking of plot holes, can we talk about how we have Kirk, he dies of radiation poisoning.
That was a great scene.
That was clever.
I like that scene.
That was
like the best acting that both of them have. What's the name of the guy who plays Kirk?
Oh, Chris Pine.
Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. That's the best acting they've done in both movies. And for the first time,
I actually saw them as Kirk and Spock interacting in a way. And then, of course, Uhura had to come in the background and go.
And they needed Uhura to be in looking forlorn suddenly.
So she ruined it. But
sad.
Let's face it, the whole replaying of the Wrath of Khan and the ending, but switching the roles, that was brilliantly
cool.
done. I give you that, J.J. Abrams. However, this is my thing. If they have 72 cryo-frozen genetic super beings, all with blood that it has miraculous healing powers, why didn't they just thaw one of the other ones out and put that blood in Kirk, since they were going to cryo-freeze him anyway? Why did it have to be Khan's? Because
they need another movie, and it's obvious. I mean, it's just. I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired of the telegraphed sequel like this, where it's like, oh, well, he's cryogenically frozen now, and they've locked him in a room. It's just, he's gonna come back, obviously. He's going to be the villain again, obviously. And so they needed a plot hole to make sure that he was still alive. Because they could clearly thaw them quickly enough to get the blood, because Dr. McCoy says, thaw him, wake him up, or put him in a coma, thaw him out. So if they can thaw him that quick, they could have easily just taken the guy's blood that they get out of the one capsule, and it all makes sense if you've seen the film.
But this is the other thing. They clearly were a little concerned about making that plot point come across clearly, because we have to have the whole first 15 minutes of the movie, which have nothing to do with the rest of the movie, which is this sad story of the little girl in the hospital who seems to be ill, but we don't really know what the deal is, but her parents are quite distressed, and then bum-ba-da-bum, here comes Khan out of nowhere and says, I can save your daughter. Was she dying? We don't know.
The funny thing is that you haven't seen Iron Man 3 yet. They use that same plot device in Iron Man 3, a movie that just came out 2 or 3 weeks ago.
The dying child, always a great plot point. People will do anything, even kill hundreds of people to save their own child.
Yeah.